President Trump's longtime ally, Roger Stone, has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for his attempts to sabotage a congressional investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The former Trump campaign advisor was found guilty on 7 counts, and they included lying to investigators and witness tampering. Prosecutors' original sentencing recommendation was 7 to 9 years.
Stone won't go to prison immediately. His lawyers have requested a new trial based on allegations of political bias. The judge in the case said Stone's sentence would be deferred until she rules on that request. For more on this, we are joined by CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman. Happy Friday. Good to see you.
Happy Friday to you.
All right, so let's first start by saying that Mr. Stone denies all wrongdoing. So if the judge rules in favor of a new trial, what will that look like? Because the president wants him to be exonerated. There's been talk of a pardon, but
yes, the president is very clear that he believes that Roger Stone will be exonerated. And the only way that Roger Stone can be exonerated, if you use the literal meaning of the word, is for a new trial to take place and for a different jury to come back with a verdict of not guilty. That's exoneration. If that does not occur, meaning there is no new trial, I guess if Roger Stone does not go into prison immediately pending appeal, the other possible exoneration is if the appellate court were to reverse this case on the basis of any of the legal issues involved, and then it would be sent back for a new trial. So either way, you're talking about a new trial. Meanwhile, if Roger Stone enters a prison, the betting money is that Donald Trump will pardon Roger Stone.
Could he appeal not the conviction, but the sentence?
You are permitted to appeal a sentence, but that would be part of his appeal for the entire case. And it's very, very rare to try to appeal a sentence, either in a group of legal issues or certainly on its own, but it can be done. That would fall on deaf ears if it were alone. But he will have legal issues in terms of a possible appeal because there are always legal issues. And if the judge denies his motion for a new trial based on who these jurors were and what biases they may have had, which is really the lawyers would say the gravamen, which is really the essence of what his complaint is about these jurors, and particularly one of them. But that creates an issue of law for the court, the appellate court.
Because even the part of the complaint is that at least one juror was biased, but these jurors would have been vetted. This is the job of both his attorney and the prosecutor.
Right.
Do you have any biases? Do you think they will impact the way you can, decision that you come to in this case?
Can I just tack on to Anne-Marie's question?
Sure.
Because to me, it's one thing if somebody says, what do you think of O.J. Simpson? And you're like, well, I don't follow football. I don't know anything about it. It's quite another when the person is the president of the United States. I mean, everybody presumably will have an opinion on the president of the United States, right? He's the president.
Pretty much everybody. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't understand how bias one way or another would influence.
I guess what we're asking is, what is the strength of this argument for him?
Well, it certainly looks like Judge Jackson doesn't think it's very strong, both by her attitude about it when it was first brought up to her, and certainly the idea that, well, I'm going to sentence you now, and then I'll take a look at that motion. I mean, we all could be surprised, but I don't think that the motion really is a strong one. But always, in the case of a trial, that you will have legal issues that will be decided in favor of the prosecution and others in favor of the defense. And Roger Stone has good lawyers. They know how to preserve a record to have an appeal. Whether or not it's successful is another matter.
So what about the sentencing guidelines are guidelines. They are guidelines that are put into place, and it's a very complicated process by which these lawyers and the Department of Justice comes up with these guidelines that the prosecutors are following. Ultimately, it's the judge's decision. Could we have seen a similar sentencing if the president and the attorney general had not tried to sort of put their thumb on the scales of justice?
Absolutely. First of all,
in other words, why even go through all of this if Judge Amy Berman Jackson would have said, 3.4 years is adequate?
Well, I certainly can't speak to the wisdom of either William Barr or President Trump in going after the original prosecution recommendation in terms of it's so not only beyond the pale and certainly against the rule of law. So it certainly we can say easily it was not wise. Nevertheless, as Judge Jackson said yesterday in court, that what happened in terms of the Department of Justice, as well as these inappropriate comments from the President of the United States, who should not be interfering with a judge's decision on sentencing, is that Judge Jackson said, well, these arguments are made all the time. They're made by the defense every day in this courtroom when there's a sentencing, that we should go below the guidelines. By the way, the person who got sent in to argue the case for the prosecution yesterday from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia, Mr. Crabb, he really shocked us all, I think, who were following it as much as we could in real time, because there's no camera in the courtroom. So you could follow it in real time on Twitter. And then, of course, you could read later on, all the way up to last night, you could read the transcript. He basically went in there as if none of this had happened with President Trump and William Barr, by saying that he's here and he respects the court and he respects the prosecutors who made the first recommendation. And yes, they made it with the approval of the United States attorney. And yes, it was reviewed. And so we just leave it up to you, Judge, because you are just. So the tempest in a teapot that was raised by President Trump and William Barr not only hurt the reputation, perhaps forever, of William Barr, and made 4 people leave this case, one of them leaving the Department of Justice altogether. And it made us look like the president believes, which he does because he said it, that he believes he is the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America. He is not. The Attorney General is, and the Attorney General should be independent from the president.
And just one thing before we pivot to Harvey Weinstein,
please.
The president at his rallies, on his Twitter, he goes after Andrew McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI.
They're all lying,
James. They're all lying. They all should be in jail. But these individuals have not been charged with any wrongdoing. And yet, when you look at the people close to the president, Michael Cohen, Paul Manafort, Papadopoulos, Roger Stone, Rick Gates, Michael Flynn, these are the people that have had criminal charges, in some cases brought against them. And there's some people in jail, like Manafort and Flynn.
Well, yes.
McCabe has not done anything wrong, according to the Department of Justice.
Yes, they have.
At least illegally.
Correct. Something may be a bit unethical, but it may not be illegal. I really commend to all of our viewers that they should take a look at the transcript of the hearing on Roger Stone and really listen to what this judge has to say about the value of truth, as well as the fact of showing what Roger Stone actually was accused of and convicted of. You're talking about intimidation of a witness. You're talking about lying to Congress and lying to a body that was Republican controlled. And what does she say? Why? Not to stand up for the president, to cover up for the president.
Okay, so now let's talk about the other big case that everyone's watching, Harvey Weinstein. I think it's the 3rd day of deliberations for the jury. Yesterday, and I think even the day before, they really were interested in some of the testimony from Annabella Sciorra. Now, she testified that she had been raped by Harvey Weinstein in her apartment. It's not her case, though. The charges aren't associated with her case, but she's one of several women who have said that he sexually assaulted her. What do you think that says about the mindset of the jury?
Well, first of all, I commend this jury because they are painstakingly going through the evidence. They are asking for a considerable amount of readback of testimony. They're stuck. And why are they stuck with Annabella Sciorra is because the predatory sexual assault indictments, those 2 charges, which carry life imprisonment as a maximum, each of them has 2 parts. One is Annabella Sciorra plus Jessica Mann. The other is Annabella Sciorra plus Mimi Halle. So in order to decide if Harvey Weinstein is guilty of the overriding crime, predatory sexual assault, they have to believe Annabella Sciorra's story beyond a reasonable doubt, as well as one of the 2 New York accusers. Now, that is a little bit bizarre to me. I'm trying to think of the right word. Because Annabella Sciorra's claim is clearly barred by years and years in the statute of limitations. Her claim is back in 93, 94. And these accusations from New York are 2006 and 2013. So it's really, if I were the defense, and I'm sure they have because they have filed umpteen motions and motions for mistrial, and it will be their appellate issue, what they're saying is this is not fair because you are elevating a case, an accusation, from back before the statute of limitations as part of your case in chief. And why isn't it fair? The most compelling case, the case that has been least able for the defense to attack, is Annabella Sciorra. The two New York accusers, their cases have been attacked loud and clear, and for good reason.
Oh,
Really
that's interesting.
fascinating.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
we're
they're
all eyes on that
deliberating now.
courthouse in New York City. Yeah, Rikki, thank you as always. Appreciate it.